Good afternoon and welcome to this week's Ask the Gardener here on the Irish Gardener on Facebook, where I do my little bit each week to help with the lockdown effort and help us all maintain a small bit of sanity by answering gardening questions. And in particular, if you've developed a love of gardening over the last 12 months, or if you're a newbie, if you like, to the world of gardening, I'm here to help in so much as I can by answering a few questions every Friday here at 1 o'clock on the Irish Gardener. Now, I'd like to start off today's show by thanking everybody who donated to the fundraiser we did last week. So last week I had a Daffodil Day themed Ask the Gardener session, and we had a donate button at the end of the post, and we raised nearly €2,000 for Daffodil Day. So thanks to everybody who gave to that. Couldn't be a better cause, of course. Now, coming up later on in today's show, I'll be speaking to head gardener at Blarney Castle and Gardens, that's Adam Whitburn. And I'll be talking, among other things, about the challenges facing him and his team running a garden of the standard of Blarney during lockdown. I will also be talking to him about the important conservation work that he and his team are doing there in Blarney, some really, really important plant conservation work. Adam will also be on hand, along with myself, to answer your gardening questions. So if you have anything gardening related, start posting them there now in the comments, and we'll get to the live ones in a while. Or if you have any gardening questions related specifically to Blarney, get them in for Adam, because you have an opportunity now to ask him directly. Also later in the show, I'm trying something new. I'll have a fantastic competition where you'll have a chance to win some goodies from my store, theirishgardener.com, completely free. So stay tuned and I'll show you how you can win them. I also want to give a shout out to my good friends in the Irish Garden magazine. If you can see it there, I'll hold it up to that camera. Excuse me. The April issue is just out now. The cover is absolutely gorgeous. Purple is my favourite colour, so it was always going to appeal to me. But I know they've faced particular challenges getting this magazine out, so congratulations to them. It's another fantastic, fantastic issue. So get out, buy it online, buy it in store, buy it wherever you can, but do support it. Fabulous, fabulous magazine. Before I go to Adam, I want to deal with questions that are coming in by the dozen over the last week, and they're all to do with slugs and snails and how to control them. Okay, so I want to just spend a couple of seconds quickly. You have a few options, right? One is by using a barrier product, which is that Slug Gone. So Slug Gone, when you get it, the pellets, if you like, look like that. They're wool pellets. Okay. Now what these do, when you wet them, then they're going to look like this. Okay, I'm not going to put them on the table because James is going to give out to me for dirtying the table. But they look like that. Not particularly attractive, but what they do is they create you soak them in water and they create a layer that is completely unpenetrable to slugs and snails. So the advantage of using barrier products like this is that we're maintaining the natural balance, and this is so critical in all aspects of the garden. The natural balance is that if we can ensure a wide variety of species in the garden, be it plants and wildlife, well, we're hopefully preventing the unnatural build-up of any one species, such as slugs or snails, because as you've heard me ramble on about so many times, that if we use these desperate metaldehyde pellets, they're also going to kill the predators for slugs and snails, such as hedgehogs and large birds. So it's much better to work with nature, work with the predators, and try and control them that way, protecting the plants by using barrier products and allowing predators to munch away on them. If excuse me, if you do want to use a pellet as a killer, do please use these ferric phosphate pellets. It's iron phosphate, as opposed to those nasty, nasty metaldehyde ones. Why am I so against the metaldehyde? Because they're not just toxic to slugs and snails, as I say, they'll also kill the birds, hedgehogs, domestic pets. They're toxic to us humans as well, so we shouldn't absolutely not be using them, particularly around food crops. They're banned for sale in many European countries, banned for sale in the UK, still freely available here. So please do avoid the metaldehyde pellets. Look for ferric phosphate or some of the barrier products. Slug traps are another great thing, and how the slug traps work, I'll show you. They come in various shapes and sizes, but the principle is always the same. So you fill it with beer. Any beer will do. It can be a cheap beer or it can be a posh beer. I don't think they're going to mind. They're attracted by the alcohol. So you bury this in the soil up to this level, if you can see. So there, yeah. So the soil comes up to there. Fill it with the beer, and then you put the cap on. Okay. So you don't even notice them in the garden. Just where my hand is the soil. So you just see that little bit above the soil. The slugs and snails get attracted in there. They go in there. They drown off in the beer, and then every few days you just come and empty that and go again. And that way you're controlling the slugs and snails, but you're not harming the beneficial wildlife that is in the garden. There is also, I bought some in to show you, the Grazers. Grazers, an English company, they do a great range of products. They're repellent products based on calcium. And this is one for slugs and snails. So by treating your vulnerable plants with this, you're making them resistant or unpalatable, if you like, to the slugs and to the snails. And again, you're maintaining that natural balance all the time. Grazers also do a ready-to-use one if you don't want to mix it. They're a fabulous, fabulous range of products. They do one for lily beetle as well. You're going to see these red lily beetles around the garden. They are the scourge of my life because I like my lilies. But you'll see them around the garden. So treat them, and this actually does work. It works fantastically well because I've already started treating my lilies with them this year. They're just above the ground, crown imperials, fritillarias, all this kind of thing. So do use them, and again, you're not putting nasty chemicals in the garden. So now, moving on quickly, Adam Whitburn is taking time out of his busy day to join me today. I first met Adam, he's head gardener, of course, at the gardens in Blarney Castle in Cork. I first met him several years ago now at this stage, and he's a fantastic, fantastic gardener with an immense knowledge of all things gardening. One of the first things he said to me, I'll always remember it, is he wants to make the gardens in Blarney as famous as the castle. It's a pretty bold statement, but you know what? I think Adam Whitburn might just be getting there. Adam, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon, Peter. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Can't hear Adam there. Can we? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. Sorry, Adam. Yeah, I can hear you again now.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks very much for reminding me of that. No, I mean, it was a bold statement at the time, but I think, you know, the owner, Sir Charles, was very keen to build the quality and the range of gardens within the estate and really bring the horticultural standard up. And it's great having, you know, an owner that's on board makes such a difference. And he has invested and giving us what we needed to really bring the place forward. So yeah,
with a garden like that, Adam, you absolutely need the owner on board, don't you? Because I mean, it doesn't come cheaply, and it doesn't come without a serious commitment.
No, absolutely not. And the other thing is, it takes time. It's having the vision, but also having the patience and the trust, I suppose, to invest the time and the effort into it. But luckily, we do have an owner who has the vision and has the interest there. So it's great.
Tell me a bit about the gardens there, Adam. For somebody who hasn't visited, now I've visited many times. I absolutely love the space down there. But talk to anybody who mightn't have been there yet. What's down there? What's in those gardens?
Well, we've over 70 acres of gardens, and the oldest date back to the 1750s. So there's great history here. You can walk up to 5 kilometres around the estate. So with the current COVID situation, it's a great place for social distancing. And we are open at the moment to local season ticket holders. And I think for mental health, it's a great destination. But we have gardens of all types and all genres. We've developed different areas, almost like gardens within gardens, let's say. So there's the traditional herbaceous borders. We have a jungle area, fern garden, often referred to as Jurassic Park. The older parts of the gardens are developed on limestone outcrops. So water-worn limestone almost tells a story in itself, but it suggests almost an otherworldly quality, something along the lines of Narnia, for example, has been mentioned. But the gardens are magical, very Robinsonian, and we tried to embrace that with all of our newer areas. We've a poison garden that we've recently developed over the last couple of years. Pinetum, we've renovated our arboretums. It's really is something for everybody, and it's a great family destination. And we're still growing, we're still developing, and that's one of the wonderful things about gardens such as Blarney is every visit's different.
You know what's another wonderful thing about the gardens in Blarney? I mean, you've named so many of them there. You have the Druids Garden and all the rest of it. It is that sense of history and all the rest of it there, but for me, one of the things that it's probably not unique. I'm sure it's not unique, but you don't see it too often. And it's when you're walking through that fabulous fern area that you're talking about, where you've planted all those new tree ferns, that you can see them from above. You're looking down on them. Normally when you're looking at tree ferns, magnificent plants as they are, but you're looking up at them and you're looking at the fronds up there. Over in Blarney, you've got a path higher than them, so you're looking down on them. And that's quite a unique opportunity, really, isn't it?
It was a great location, and that's one of the things that attracted us to that. Is it's an old quarry, and so really the space was already made for development. And we're lucky in that in Blarney there are different heights and almost different aspects to play with. So we were able to take what is a natural sort of amphitheatre and then plant it up and build it over the years. So it's taken 10 to 12 years of work to really get the fern garden to where it is now. And that's included not just the planting of the ferns, but obviously the health and safety work on the trees and the waterfall that went in, and then new installations, such as our boardwalk area that runs along the cliff face, which makes it obviously much safer to access the cliffs and view the ferns.
And a garden is a labour of love for anybody, and a garden of that scale, of course, it's such a huge labour of love, and you must love having it to yourself. But of course, when a garden's open to the public, a certain amount of it is about showing off, isn't it? So you must miss, I mean that in the kindest possible way, of course, but showing it to people who can appreciate it with you. You must miss, I know you're still open, but obviously you're limited to those living within the 5K. You must miss being, if it's fair to say, being properly open, you must miss the masses, or do you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I miss the hustle and bustle. That said, the locals that are coming in have been really supportive, and it's great because we get continuity. So often, I mean, the large numbers of our visitors would be one-off tourist visitor, and you don't get to know them, let's say. Whereas our new visitors, or some of them have been coming here for a long time now at this stage, they see the place week in, week out over the seasons, and it's a different experience. And we find that there's a sense of ownership there with them that maybe wouldn't be there with the tourists. So
fair
different,
enough. They feel part of it.
And I think it's the hustle and bustle on a normal, let's say normal day, which hopefully will return at some point, that really kind of makes it special.
And hopefully they will return before too long. Talk to me, Adam, about the challenges. What challenges has COVID brought to running the gardens at Blarney?
Well, really, the last 18 months have been a completely different kettle of fish, because we've obviously our annual work that goes on, and then all the additional maintenance and development jobs. But over the last 18 months, it's been a lot more bitty and broken. Obviously, we've had the drop-off in tourist numbers and the revenue that comes with that. But we've also been forced to close for extended periods and reduce staff to a great extent. And all of that brings its own challenges. The staff is the biggest issue, because obviously staff being on less hours, reduced hours, 3-day weeks, or having to break up the team by having different people in at different times in order to maintain distancing. All of that takes managing. And we're lucky that we had the gardens at such a, I suppose, a good standard to begin with. That stood us in good stead, and it's meant that up till now we've been able to keep things, certainly keep our heads above water anyway, and we've been fortunate. I am worried about this year, and it remains to be seen what will happen. For example, we normally have 2 or 3 full-time students who assist us over the summer in various colleges. They won't be coming this year. So there's a lot of juggling to be done, and I think there will be a few areas possibly get a bit fluffy, but we'll deal with that.
Well, challenges lie ahead, but things are improving, and of course, pretty soon we'll be allowed to stay within our county, and then come the 26th of April, I think hopefully the things will be a bit freer in terms of movement. But I would urge people, obviously, to get to see Blarney Castle if it's in your area or in your county when it's allowed, and then also. There are gardens like this all over Ireland. They should all be visited. We have a few live questions coming in there, Adam, that I want to go to, if that's okay, and I'll throw them at you there. There's one here from Bernadette. Hi Peter, I sowed an Osmanthus delvei in shade. It's not doing great. Can I move it to a sunnier spot now? Adam, I'm going to throw that one over to you as you're here. I'm going to take a break for a minute. I'll throw that one over to you.
Well, moving any shrub comes with its risks, especially now coming into the growing season. It's getting quite late. One of the questions I'd put is, how long has it been in the ground? If it's not been in too long, you'd probably get away with moving something now. But the key is to keep an eye on it and keep it watered, keep it staked and steady, so the roots are actually having a chance to establish. Personally, at this stage, if it's looking like it's established, I'd be erring on the side of caution and moving it later in the year rather than now.
Leave it off. If it's newly planted, maybe risk it. But if it's in the ground longer than a couple of years, leave it till November again, I think. Exactly. There's another couple of live ones coming in there now. There is one from... Where is it gone? I saw it there a second ago. From Breed. Lavender. How long do lavender plants live? I have a lavender bed planted 6 years. Should I fertilise it? Over to you again on that one, Adam.
The lavenders, lavender's a Mediterranean plant, and as such, it needs hot, dry, free-draining borders, which is quite difficult to achieve in Ireland. So if you've got them going for 6 years, you're doing well. Regular pruning and tipping back is the key. And obviously, if they've been in the ground in that area that long, feed will be getting scarce. So a top-up of feed is no harm at all. But there is a point at which you do need to replace lavenders, and especially in Ireland, I think sometimes you just have to make the hard decision to clear out and start again.
I agree. I think they have a lifespan, haven't they, in our country? We've too much rain and too much nutrient in the soil for them. I think that they outgrow themselves. A lot of the plants we grow in Ireland are from all various different parts of the world. And I know in the gardens in Blarney, Adam, you have beds of plants and areas of plants from different areas, and you in particular, but your team as well. You're very involved in important plant conservation work, and you go off on modern day plant hunting trips, don't you? Can you talk to me a bit about that, where you go and why it's so important?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you take yourself back 100 years into the Victorian era, really, the plants that we find in our gardens now, a large proportion of them don't come from anywhere near Ireland or Europe. They come from all over the world, the Himalayas, North America, Vietnam. And the plant hunters of their day brought these things back, and they became what we associate with our garden plants. And really, we're repeating history in a way, because we're going back out to some of these areas and re-examining, re-exploring, and in some cases finding entire new species. But the key is conservation. Some of the plants that were collected 100 years ago are now extinct in the wild and only really found in gardens. And this is the way they've survived, in effect. So by us going out now and working with the likes of the Vietnamese government and liaising with gardens such as Kew and Glasnevin Botanics, we're able to bring plants back, or seed back in our case, which we grow on in the gardens, and could well be a future conservation initiatives, for various countries. But we're particularly interested in Vietnam because I've been there several times, and there's over 10,000 plant species in Vietnam, compared to less than 1,000 in Ireland native. So it's mind-blowing. But you see behind me here, this is one of the things we collected. This is Aesculus wangii. So it's a large variety of chestnut, and just to show you how large,
wow,
golf ball size fruit. Now, these things, you can imagine, they don't distribute very well. They tend to drop out the tree and roll down the hill, and that's it. And these grow in areas that are very popular for cardamom farming. Now, cardamom is, it's for the size of fruit that you get, it's a considerable plant, 6-7 foot leaves, and basically it's monoculture. So they clear everything, leave a few trees standing to help with a bit of shade. And so things like this, as they germinate, they don't stand a chance. And the entire hillside ends up covered in the cardamom plants. Now, this is a baby we brought back because in our Vietnamese garden, our Vietnamese woodland, which is an ex situ conservation project, we're going to introduce a couple of these as a way of illustrating, one of the problems with habitat loss. But the Aesculus is a wonderful tree, and you can see this is only its second year, so fast growth rate, which coming from one of those, you can see why. There's a couple of other things I brought up. You can just see this. This is actually a young tulip tree, so Liriodendron chinense. Obviously, things like the acers. Now, this acers, we're obviously well aware of the Japanese maples, and this is just a variety of such, but commonly found in the gardens now and collected in the past and distributed. But this is a new wild collection. And then the last one there, another one we're well familiar with, is the Buddleia species. Now, this one's a little bit more tropical looking and has bigger flowers, but same thing as the standard butterfly bushes, really. So, the conservation side is very important, but it's also extremely interesting just simply to go out and bring things back and introduce them into the gardens and see how they get on.
Well, and then on a far more frivolous note than the importance of the conservation, people like me go and get to see Buddleia species and chestnut species that I would never, of course, have seen before, because I haven't taken the trip up the mountains like you have to be in Vietnam. Just so I understand you right, that Aesculus, that chestnut tree that you have, they would naturally set seed there. But because of the cardamom farming, they're now endangered. Would I be right?
There's only 3 known sites left in the wild, Peter, and they reckon around 35 mature individuals are left.
Wow,
One of the
wow, we
sites
really
we
are at
visited,
the end of that species.
oh yeah, it really is last minute, last ditch. One of the sites we visited, within a year of visiting it, 2 or 3 more of the adults had been cut down, and it's just a sea of cardamom. And it's unfortunate that in situations like this, money talks, and cardamom is a high, I suppose, for the region and for the people that are dealing with it, it's a cash crop, and it's about survival for them. And the trees, unfortunately, come second.
Yeah, globally a rethink is needed, but that's perhaps for another day. I want to just go to some live questions again for you there, Adam, if you don't mind. What have we got? I have one from Lorraine. Is there anything I can plant? That's an interesting question. Is there anything I can plant to inhibit ivy? Any suggestions there, Adam?
Well, it depends on the site. Something like Pachysandra or a low-growing spreading plant will help, but inhibit's a strong word. Ivy tends to inhibit other things and is quite invasive. So you'd have to manually control it while another plant was getting established is the answer. And I mean, I'd be loath to be advising you to spray or use chemicals, but ivy, if you keep pulling it off and keep removing it, it will weaken and it'll die off in time. But inhibit with another plant's a difficult one.
And it's also interesting because if you do find something that, as you say, that's going to inhibit the ivy, like Pachysandra, yes, you need to remove the ivy until it establishes. But then if something is going to bully the ivy out of it, it's probably going to be a bigger bully itself. So maybe be careful what you wish for. Another question coming in there, and it is from Margaret. What is a hardy hedge for an exposed site, preferably evergreen? Thanks.
I'd be careful answering this one. It depends on your location. I mean, one of my favourites from a classy-looking hedge would be Prunus lusitanica, which has a little bit of a look like a bay leaf, and it's a beautiful sort of, I suppose you can clip it, so it'll take the form of a larger leaf, but not as big and as messy as a normal laurel hedge would be. Griselinia is one that people always use on coastal locations, but we found with a few of the tough winters, we actually had problems there. So my first go-to would be the Prunus lusitanica. Obviously, you can look at a yew hedge. It's a more expensive option if you want an established hedge, but it's a beautiful hedge in the long term. I don't know if you've anything you'd jump in with there, Peter.
Well, I'd also throw in Elaeagnus abingii. It's a hedge that I love. I love the Prunus lusitanica as well, but the Elaeagnus I find good as well, I must say, in coastal situations. So you have a few to think about there, Margaret. Another question then coming in from, where has it gone? James is behind the scenes today. He's working very slowly, I'm afraid. Adam, as a tour leader, I have led many tours, I'm sure there should be tours, to Blarney, and while they might come to see the castle, they certainly leave in awe of the gardens. I would always promote a full visit around the gardens, a fabulous place and well worth the trip. That's a compliment to you there, Adam.
That's fantastic, and it's always nice to hear and see that these tourists that come in often, they have no expectations of gardens. They've come for the castle and the stone, and that's obviously something, as we mentioned at the start, I've been trying to change. To hear so many complimenting the gardens on their way out means that they're going to talk to other people. So it's always great to hear.
And I suppose on that note, Adam, I must ask you, I know the gardens are open at the moment for those living within the 5K, and when restrictions leave for those living in County Cork, and then hopefully before too long it'll be open to the whole country. What about the castle? The castle isn't open. Any word on when the castle might be opening?
We're just taking advice and biding our time at the moment. We had a system in place last year where we were cleaning the stone with a special product, which was completely approved, and we were able to bring people in a managed basis. So it was stop-start, numbers in, numbers out type thing. So there was no queue forming. And I think we can probably repeat something similar this summer, but we must make sure that we've ticked all the boxes and that we're officially allowed to do that before we venture down that road. So hard to say for definite, but I'd be hoping that we'd get some news certainly into the midsummer that we were able to.
But in all my years going down to visit the gardens of Blarney, I think the last time I was in the castle was probably when I was that high on a school tour. But the gardens are worth the visit alone, believe me. So don't let the fact that the castle may not be open put you off. Adam, fantastic to speak to you. Thank you very much for joining me on Ask the Gardener today. I do appreciate it. I'm going to let you get back to the glorious Easter sunshine and back out into the garden. Thanks again, and best of luck for whatever the summer brings.
Thanks very much, Peter. It's appreciated, and happy Easter to everybody.
And to you. And lay off the chocolate. No, that was Adam. And I would urge you to everybody to make use of the resources that we have on our doorstep. These open gardens, these public gardens that are open, they are just a godsend. If you're lucky enough to live within 5Ks of Blarney, Powerscourt, Mount Usher, Mount Congreve, and dozens, hundreds more throughout Ireland, do make use of the opportunity. Get out if they're open, and if they're within your 5K, get out, walk around, enjoy nature, enjoy the garden. You will benefit so much from them. And also just your own garden. Get out into your own garden. Now, for something a little bit different for you this week, I'm giving away gift vouchers from my own store, theirishgardener.com. And here's everything you need to see onto how you can win. Hopefully here's everything you can see. Your chance to win one of 5 vouchers from my online store, theirishgardener.com. All you have to do is send me in a picture of your garden looking at its best. Now, it doesn't matter when it was taken. It could be last year, this year, 10 years ago. Just send it on in. After this show, I'll be putting up a post asking to see your beautiful gardens. Now, this is where you post your photograph, nowhere else. I won't see it. So simply comment on that post with a picture of your garden saying where you're from to be in with a chance of winning the gift card. Next week, I'll pick my top 5 and I'm going to let the audience vote on which one they like the best. I will be calling the winner live on next week's show here on Ask the Gardener, so please ensure you'll be able to take a call between 1 and 2 p.m. on Friday the 9th of April. The 4 runners-up will each get a €10 voucher, and the overall winner will get a €50 voucher to spend however you like on my store, theirishgardener.com. For more information on how to enter and how to vote for your favourite garden, please visit theirishgardener.com. Entrants must be 18 or over. Entries close on Tuesday the 6th of April at 3 p.m. Good luck. Yes, good luck indeed, and best of luck if you do enter that competition. Now, just do bear in mind that you don't send them in by email, don't send them in by messenger. Only post the questions to that in the comments of that post that I will put up after this video. Now, before I go to more of the live questions, I have a few that were sent in during the week. This one was from Rose Fitzgerald. I must put on the glasses again, I'm afraid. Hi, Peter. I transplanted my tomato plants into my polytunnel a few days ago. Now, Rose sent us in a picture as well, so hopefully we can see that picture. The raised bed they went into had seaweed and cardboard mulched over the winter. I didn't rinse the seaweed. Is this the reason the leaves have turned almost white? I took them out and repotted them to see if they will improve. I don't think I overwatered them. Any advice? Now, Rose, it doesn't look like you've overwatered them, certainly. I can't actually make out 100% from the picture, but it looks from the top leaf like that white is a bit powdery. If it's powdery, it could well be powdery mildew. Probably a bit early to see it, but it's still possible that it's powdery mildew. I thought at first glance, when I saw it a while back, I thought it looked a bit like the tobacco mosaic virus. So you'd expect to see the leaves become nearly translucent and nearly papery. If it is the mosaic virus, I'm afraid you've no answer, you've no solution, you just need to throw them out. But I would say in the first instance, maybe with a scissors, just cut some of those leaves. There's a number of things that could have caused it. You see, I can't, as I say, see it 100%. I know it's a good photograph, it's just you know, unless you can touch things really. So I would remove the infected leaves with a scissors, okay? And dump them, and then I would drench the plants with the solution of copper sulfate mixed with water, which if it is mildew or some fungal infection like that, the copper sulfate is a very good broad spectrum organic fungicide. So mix that with the water and put it onto them. That'll also help to protect those tomatoes against blight, you'll be glad to hear. Sometimes, again, it's hard to say. I think my best guess is powdery mildew looking at it, but sometimes when you can see leaf discoloration in a tomato like that, it could be something like potassium deficiency. So good tomato food, like my old friend, the Nature Safe tomato food, a good organic Irish one with seaweed from the Connemara coast. Give it a feed with that, give it a drench with the copper sulfate, and you should be good on that, I think, then. Now, I also have a question from Breda Quinn. Can you give me some advice and tips on planting these two skimmia that I got for Christmas in the ground? This female one is self-fertile, but I read somewhere that it would do even better with a male one nearby. Do I need to plant them both close together? Can other plants be planted in between them? Any other tips? Best soil? Do they require pruning? A lot of questions there, Breda, and they're fabulous looking plants, actually, those two skimmia. So you can see there, they're quite different, aren't they? So the smaller one with the red berries is self-fertile. So that means that it's got male and female flowers on the one plant, and it actually doesn't need. And this might be news to some people that some species or some genus of plants like ilex or holly, skimmias, and others. They only have one, either the male flowers or the female flowers per plant. So you have male and female plants, and you need both to pollinate to create the berries. The female then will go on and create the berries. In the self-fertile form, which is the lower one, you've got both, as I say. The one on the with all the flowers there, stunning white scented flowers, that's a male form. So the self-fertile form, which is the lower one, will do better with the male nearby. Absolutely, it'll do better. You always need a good man nearby. So that will do better, though it will survive on its own as well. As you don't have to plant them right next to each other, no. It's up to the bees and it's up to the butterflies and the other pollinators and the moths. They'll transfer it, okay? So provided they're in the same garden, I would say if they're within 20, 30 feet of each other, they should be okay. The closer you put them, obviously, the better the chance. But can you put other plants in between them? Absolutely. And any other tips? They do like an acid soil. So that's a soil with a slightly lower pH, lower than 7 or under. If they're in an alkaline soil, so if the pH is higher than 7, you'll see a lot of yellowing on the leaf, and it'll just be stunted. It won't thrive, and it won't flower half as well as in that photograph. If you're not sure what your soil is, your pH, you'll get a soil kit, a pH tester kit in most garden centres. You'll be able to get it and check which soil yours is, okay? So get one of them, see what the soil is, and if you have limey soil, you might be better off keeping them and growing them in pots or containers, and taking them off that. Or ignoring planting them in the ground and just having them in pots, okay? Annabelle then has a question about perennials. How do you stop slugs from attacking them? I don't know what's happening there now. I think the video has gone up again for the competition. So hopefully you can hear me. Annabelle has a question about perennials. How do you stop slugs from attacking them when they emerge from the soil in springtime, often before you've even realised they've started to appear? So I dealt with that, Annabelle, at the start of the piece. I dealt with all the different slug things that you can use, from your slug gone to your ferric phosphate pellets. And if it might be a good rule of thumb to get out there with the slug gone pellets, that's those guys, barrier product, early in the season, even around February, March, and protect those vulnerable plants. If you have something growing in pots, maybe use that copper tape. That's copper with the sticky tape on the other side, okay? So if you get out there February, early March, before the slugs have even started, well then hopefully you're going to be protecting those plants. Now, I'm going to go back to the VT there for the competition, just to show you exactly how you can win vouchers from the Irish Gardener. Is send me in a picture of your garden looking at its best. Now, it doesn't matter when it was taken. It could be last year, this year, 10 years ago. Just send it on in. After this show, I'll be putting up a post asking to see your beautiful gardens. Now, this is where you post your photograph, nowhere else. I won't see it. So simply comment on that post with a picture of your garden saying where you're from to be in with a chance of winning the gift card. Next week, I'll pick my top 5 and I'm going to let the audience vote on which one they like the best. I will be calling the winner live on next week's show here on Ask the Gardener. So please ensure you'll be able to take a call between 1 and 2 p.m. on Friday the 9th of April. The 4 runners-up will each get a €10 voucher, and the overall winner will get a €50 voucher to spend however you like on my store, theirishgardener.com. For more information on how to enter and how to vote for your favourite garden, please visit theirishgardener.com. Entrants must be 18 or over. Entries close on Tuesday the 6th of April at 3 p.m. Good luck. So my apologies, I had to put up that again because I think you didn't hear the sound the first time that video went out. So hopefully now you can see how to enter the competition to win some gift vouchers. Now moving on to another question that came in earlier in the week from Greta. I need advice. I think this is lichen growing on a sweet gum tree. What do I do? Well, let's see the photograph, Greta. Lichen growing on a sweet... Yes, it is indeed lichen growing on a sweet gum. Absolutely nothing to do. Lichen is absolutely harmless, Greta, not doing any harm to the tree whatsoever. And in fact, it's a sign of a clean atmosphere, a clean environment. So it means you've no pollution in the air, which is a good sign. The only thing I might do is where you see it there growing around the emerging leaf buds, and it's a fantastic time of the year now, the bud burst. You see the trees coming back into growth all over the country, and it's just glorious. But you see those buds just about to burst back into leaf. Maybe with your finger or a soft cloth, just clean it off the leaf buds, just in case it inhibits some opening. But apart from that, nothing to worry about, nothing to do. Now, there's a few more live questions coming in. Sorry for a few of the glitches we've had today. I'm still getting to grips with this Facebook Live. But we're getting there, and I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope you're finding it beneficial. Letitia, I have a banana plant indoors, but the leaves start getting yellow. Is there anything I can do about it? Well, you're right to have it indoors because living in Ireland, it's certainly not going to take the amount of rain and cold we have outdoors. So if it's yellowing, check first of all, Letitia, if the pot is big enough. So it may need to be repotted. Try and send me in a picture if you can, I'll have a look. But if you think it needs to be repotted, that would lead to it going yellow. If it's in a big enough pot, well, feed it, but feed it with an organic plant food such as the Nature Safe Atlantic Seaweed, or there's another very good one, Bio Gold. Bio Gold is another very good organic plant food just to green up the leaves and improve the overall vigour of the plant. And now I have a question from Gail. Any advice for low maintenance perennials for a dry border in daytime shade? Thank you. You're not making it easy, Gail, are you? Daytime shade is difficult, and nighttime it's going to be shaded too. So dry shade is probably the hardest area of the garden to get right. My go-to for those plants would be, for those areas, I would start off with things like the geraniums. Now, I don't mean the bedding plant geraniums. I mean the cranesbill or the herbaceous perennial geraniums, and they'll form a carpet of growth. The some are evergreen, some will die back for the winter and come on each year. There's one Roseanne, which is a very, very good one. Now, they will do well with certain levels of shade and even heavy shade, but if it's full shade, particularly if it's under trees, so if it's dry shade and if the dry is caused by trees drying out the soil, and if the shade is from the trees or from the conifers, it's next to impossible. But if it's next to a wall or something like that's causing the shade, try your geraniums. You could also try a bit of ground cover ivy and pachysandra, or would you want perennials more than shrubs? So another one you could try, I'm just trying to think shady areas. What you could try is stilbays and hostas, but if you are trying them, they will do well in the shade, but they do like a good nutrient or humus-rich soil, so it's something that's a bit moisture retentive. So as yours is dry, I would work in some good organic matter into that soil. So some good homemade compost or something like that, leaf mulch, anything like that, just to improve the texture and the water retention ability of the soil. So give them a go and see how you get on, Gail. And then I have a question from Helen. I have a golden raspberry plant that I have down about 15 years. Once I got a full crop of golden autumn raspberries. It grows beautifully, comes to full flower, but never gets the fruit. Withered from it, but never get the fruit. Withered from it at this stage. Is it a dead loss, or will I keep prevailing? Well, no, it's not a dead loss, Helen. Certainly not. No, you don't say in that, and I'm guessing you don't. But do you prune it? So what you should do with any of the raspberries, yellow or red, is during the autumn months, cut back so that the canes that fruited, or that should have fruited this summer, they will go a kind of foxy brown colour. And next year's canes, the ones we want to concentrate on, are a very green colour during end of summer, early autumn, kind of September, October time. So the ones that are foxy brown, you can cut to ground level. And the ones that are green, you concentrate on them for next year. And that pruning not only is going to is the right thing to do, excuse me, for fruit production, but that's also going to help with what the problem is here, because your problem here is a fungal infection, right? And the best course of action with nearly all fungal infections in the first instance is what we call cultural control. So what that means is pruning out the infected growth. So on the shoots that have gone that foxy red colour, if we remove them, we're removing a lot of the infection. Now, the fact that it should have been done last autumn, winter, and hasn't been done isn't hugely important now. I would do it because the infection is in the plant if we haven't treated it. So remove a lot of last year's crop, and the younger canes that are coming up from ground level, I want to focus on them, concentrate on them, keep some of them. And then I mentioned it earlier in answer to one of the questions, copper sulfate, a good broad spectrum organic fungicide. Make a drench of copper sulfate in water, water it on the raspberry canes that you're keeping, and drench the soil with it as well. Feed it with a good nature-safe tomato food, because that's high in potassium and phosphorus. It's going to promote flower and fruit production. And then cross your fingers, hope for the best, and let me know how you get on. And then I have a question from Rita. When would I expect asparagus to start growing? Well, Rita, you should expect it to start breaking the soil. Where are we? Coming 2nd of April. Yeah, I'd expect to see it any time. If you're not seeing it yet, I would expect to start seeing it over the next couple of weeks. Asparagus does like a good rich soil, likes to be well fed, so use a good seaweed feed on the asparagus. Use it even now, and that should encourage a bit of growth. And then we've got a question from Kathleen. How do you know which lavender is edible for baking, please? Well, to the best of my knowledge, and I am qualifying this and prefacing this by in case I poison anybody, to the best of my knowledge, all lavender is edible for use in baking. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that. I would imagine a quick search online. You have lavandula, the botanical name for lavender, Lavandula angustifolia, and you have Lavandula stoicas. The angustifolia is what we refer to as the classic or English lavender, and the stoicas is the one we refer to as the French lavender, that feathery one with the butterfly flowers. So I haven't used it in cooking, and I'm not an expert in the kitchen, which is why I'm stumbling a bit with this question, because I don't know the correct answer. So I would think they are all okay, but certainly the one that would traditionally be used would be the angustifolia, or the English lavenders. So varieties of angustifolia would include Hidcote, Munstead, Essence Purple, those kind of ones. So maybe maybe look for the angustifolia hybrids. I hope that's right, Kathleen, but do maybe double check that, okay? And then I have a question from Claire. Hello, could you please help? I have Magnolia stellata in my front garden. Over the last 3 years, it's become very slow to bloom with less flowers, looking more woody despite different feeds. This corner has not done well over the years with larger plants. Would this be due to the large street tree outside, which is huge? Any recommendations for bringing my tree back to life? Well, Claire, I think you may have partly answered that question, or maybe fully answered that question yourself. The large street tree outside, the fact that it's not on your property doesn't mean it's not having an impact on your plants. So it could well be the problem, just taking all the nutrients and water out of that area. An established magnolia shouldn't need pruning if it's happy where it is, but this guy obviously isn't happy where it is, so perhaps pruning it might be a suggestion to you. And I would do that not this time of the year. I would do that kind of come April, May, or end of April, early May. Prune it back then, but also feed it. Now, magnolias, same as camellias, rhododendrons, all these kind of plants that are spring flowering, they set their flower buds this year. So in autumn of this year, so that's August, September, October, it's when that magnolia would set its flower buds for opening next spring. So you said you've used several feeds, but you don't say which ones or when. So it's important to get the right one and put it down at the right time. And that's the time. It's when it's setting its flower buds, as I say, August, September, October of this year. That's when you want to feed it with, again, something rich in potassium and phosphorus, like sulfate of potash, or the nature-safe tomato food, a good rich tomato food, something high in potassium and phosphorus. So try feeding it with that this autumn, but I do suspect that the tree next to it is having an impact. So I have another question then from Judy. Hi, my flame tree is looking pretty sparse this year. It is putting out lots of runners from the main tree. Is this the problem? Thank you. The flame tree, I'm guessing, well, there's several things that are referred to as the flame tree. And this is why we use Latin, actually. It's not just a reason for the anoraks like myself to show off. It's so we're absolutely sure of the plants that we're using, because it's an international language, obviously. So the flame tree could be the Pyrrhus flame of the forest, but from the way you describe it, sending out runners from the main tree, I'm wondering, is it Embothrium coccineum, which is the Chilean flame tree? So it's possibly that one, because that does send out these suckers around the main stem. Is that causing the problem? Yes, absolutely, it could be that the growth is going into these suckers that are coming out from the main tree. and instead of going into the main tree, all the growth from the root system is going into these suckers. The good news with these suckers is you can remove them and have lots and lots of individual embothyriums. So I would do that, and then the growth is going to go back into the main tree. Do let me know though if it's the pyrrhus or if it's the embothyrium. So in other words, if it's the Chilean flame tree you're talking about, or if it's the pyrrhus flame of the forest. Then I have a question from Joan. We have a 30-year-old camellia which is looking a bit unhealthy lately. Can we trim it or can we move it? So if it's 30 years of age, Joan, I'd be very, very slow to move it, because there'd be a huge risk of it not surviving the move. So you can trim it. You can prune camellias, absolutely no problem. You would do it straight after flowering. So depending on the species and variety of camellia, it could be in flower now or it could be as late as June. But when they finish flowering, that's when you prune it. And remember, like I said a minute ago, the magnolias are very similar to the camellias in that they all set the flower buds during August, September, October for next year, okay? So that's when you need to feed it with the sulfate of potash or the tomato food. But you trim it in between the end of this year's flowers and the buds for next year. So you've quite a limited window. So I would trim it, prune it back, that'll encourage it to bush up, and feed it. You feed it for flowering, like I said, with the sulfate of potash or the tomato food. But for overall plant vigour, I would look for an ericaceous plant food or an acid plant food, something like sequestered iron. So maybe feed it during from now on, with sequestered iron for overall plant vigour. Now, another question that came in earlier in the week, I want to go back to before I forget it, and it was from Sarah. I have to put on the glasses again, I'm afraid. Hi Peter, I'm planting 100 10-inch bare root boxes this weekend. My ground won't be ready for a few months, so I will be putting them in individual 1-litre pots, a mix of compost and garden soil for a while. Can you advise what I should do once they are planted? Is soil and compost mix okay? And any suggested feed? So Sarah, yeah, so if you have the bare root boxes but you're not ready to plant them, potting them on now is absolutely perfect. And though the topsoil and compost mix you're talking about sounds absolutely grand, there shouldn't be much need for feeding, realistically. Most important thing to keep them alive is water. And you might kind of look at me a bit funny and say, what's he going on about water? It's always raining. But no, when they're in a pot, they have no access to water outside of that pot, obviously. So if that pot dries out, the plant will just die. So if it dries out, like it's gorgeous weather now, hopefully for the whole Easter weekend, and if they go 3 or 4 days with no water, that plant may not survive. It might be a few weeks before you see it die off, but you do need to pay attention to water. Obviously, nature is going to do it a lot of the time, but not every day. So while you have them in pots, keep them well watered. If you do want to give them a feed, I would go not with the tomato food, but just with the Nature Safe seaweed, just a straightforward seaweed feed to keep them good and strong and green. They'll survive in a 1-litre or 2-litre pot more than 6 months if you want to. They'll survive in that well into next year if you want. Now, we also have another question that came in earlier, was from Jane. I purchased 3 lots of seed potatoes from yourself. Thank you very much, Jane. They came up nicely in our polycarbonate tunnel, but overnight we seem to have a problem with one variety, the Sharps Express. I wonder if you could tell me, do you know what it may be? These plants are still growing really well, and Jane has sent in a picture. I spoke to someone else in the Irish Polytunnel group who said that he has the same thing with the same variety. So let's have a look. Okay, I see it there. So it's on the leaf. I wonder, again, just from the photograph, I wonder, are they moving, Jane? Are they little aphids? If they are little aphids, first course of action, we just cut the leaves and remove them, and maybe treat it with a garlic wash or even the grazers, the grazers, the one for whitefly, or yes, that's the grazers. Remember I was talking about grazers earlier? It's basically different formulations of calcium to make plants resistant to different pests. So the ones to protect against aphids is actually the grazers for the cabbage whitefly and aphids, it's called. But it also, if it's aphids, that's it, but it's just a bit difficult to make it out from the photograph. It might just be, are they little blisters on the leaf? Now this is a bit unusual, but it could be a thing called edema. Now edema is where, yeah, if they do, I can't see if there's little legs or if they're little blisters, but if they're little blisters on the leaf, that could be edema, which is actually, it's a kind of a disorder, it's not a disease. And it could be true, because you said it's in a polycarbonate tunnel, so that could be true actually, it could be accurate, particularly if you've been giving them a lot of water, which is the correct thing to do. They store the water, it's a disorder that's not that common, but they store the edema. It's like in humans where you get a swelling of fluid. It's the same here. They're little swellings, they're tiny little swellings where they're storing the water outside of the normal place. So it could be edema. So I would, if it's edema, I wouldn't be too worried about it. It's nothing to worry about. But I would just keep the water. And the reason I say in a polycarbonate tunnel it could be is because it gets very hot and you've been giving it a lot of water. The conditions could be getting a bit stressful with the heat, possibly. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just keep the watering more standard. What I mean by that is don't drench it and then leave it for a day or two and then drench it again. Keep it more consistent, and that should help to alleviate that problem. Now, there's a few more live questions coming in there. There is one from, let's have it here, sorry, in front of me. Mary Jo. Last year I had some daisies, I don't know the name, coming up, but they were eaten by earwigs. Can you help, please? Well, daisies, they were probably some kind of argyranthum or marguerite, I suspect, Mary Jo. Earwigs don't really cause that many problems. But if it was earwigs, it's probably more likely to be slugs. So one of the things I talked about at the top of the program, at the very start of this piece, we'll go through the slug remedies. And one of the best things you can do for earwigs is if you get a little pot, I don't have one to show you, but if you get a little small terracotta pot, even a plastic pot, fill it with straw, okay? And then put it upside down on top of a bamboo. Don't laugh at me. Put it upside down on top of a bamboo, not high, only off the ground, and put it near those daisies. The earwigs will go to find that nice, comfortable place to nest in the straw. When you go in there every morning, go and empty it, and that's getting rid of the earwigs. It's probably the best thing to do for earwigs. But I'd be probably more inclined to think that it's slugs and snails causing the damage in the earwigs in the first place. Now, I have a question then from Elisa, which also came in during the week. I'm building a dead hedge in my garden. Now, that's a great idea, building a dead hedge. Great, it's like a huge insect hotel, if you like, for wildlife here in Cavan. I have two questions. What should I grow in front of and through it to give it some stability? And can you assist in where I might be able to source suitable branches to continue it? No trees left to prune in my own garden, and the farmers can't cut theirs now. Well, you're quite right, Elisa. Nobody should be cutting hedges now because under the Wildlife Act we need to leave them alone until September because of wildlife nesting season. So there's a picture of your dead hedge. It looks fantastic. Fabulous thing to do, particularly in a rural situation. So in terms of where you're going to get trimmings, I don't know. Ask around County Cavan, I'm afraid. I don't know where you're going to get some, but I'm sure somebody, and maybe even somebody watching today, would be more than happy to let you take their trimmings. What would I plant in front of it and through it for stability? Well, I think I would plant things like maybe some of the willow or even some dogwood, some cornus, because they're going to tie in, because they're important plants for biodiversity anyway, particularly the willow because it's in flower at the moment and the bees are loving it. And the other thing is with the willow and with cornus, you can cut them back once a year, and those trimmings can be used to further build up that dead hedge. So I think they'd be good things to go, and they'd give it the stability. They're strong enough, they'll take a bit of wear and tear, and you'll also have more raw material for the dead hedge in time. So willow or dogwood, yeah, I think that's what I'd go for. Now, I have another live question coming in there, and it is from Bernadette. Hi Peter, I sowed my jasmine in shade and it isn't doing well. Can I move it to a sunnier position? Well, yes, Bernadette, you're right. I'd say that's why it's not doing well, because jasmine's like full sun. And think about when we go away on holidays, or when we could go abroad on holidays, hopefully not too long again before we can. And you'll see jasmine dripping off the balconies in these lovely hot countries, and Portugal and Spain and Italy and the south of France. But they're in full sun and lots of heat. It's not going to do well in a shady position here in Ireland. So yes, you can move it to a sunnier position, but I would say not at this time of the year. It's just gone a bit too late. The window of opportunity to move plants is from kind of November, I would say, depending on the year, from November to early to mid-March. I'd say we're just gone that couple of weeks too late. When you're moving it, what's over the ground, because it's unrealistic, you probably won't be able to move everything over the ground, so maybe you can trim it back. You can trim them back very, very hard. You're only going to be pruning them to help them. So lift as much of the root system out of the ground as possible into its new home. Now, if it's really not thriving and if it's doing very, very poor, then you've nothing to lose by trying it now. But bear in mind, if you move it now, the plant gets all the water and that magical energy from the soil through the root hairs. Now, these are at the extremities of the root system. They're microscopic. We can't see them. When we lift something out of the ground, obviously we're severing those root hairs, or a number of them. And so we've limited the plant's ability to take moisture and nutrients out of the soil. That's the reason we do it during the dormant period, so the plant can repair that damage before it starts growing again in the springtime. So if you do that now, you're going to have to counteract that damage by pouring water on it for the next few months to make sure that it can get whatever water it needs. But I would prefer to leave it go until probably November next year, move it to somewhere sunny. Hope that helps, Bernadette. And I also have a question then coming in from Joanne. When and how should I treat apple trees to prevent disease, or is it necessary to treat them? Thanks. Well, that's a good question, Joanne. And the diseases that will affect apple trees tend to be, there are some bacterial ones, but they tend to be fungal, like scab and leaf spot and rust and things like these. And the reason I said it's a good question is because it's far better to try and prevent fungal diseases than it is to treat them when they get it. So again, like I mentioned in one of the earlier questions, the best first course of action with any fungal infection is cultural control. So you try and create the correct conditions for optimum growth in the apple trees. That's good air circulation. You don't have crossing branches. So when you prune them, and now is not the time of the year to prune your apple trees, it's kind of November to January. But when you prune them, you want to be creating a good open centre to allow good air circulation. Any branches that are crossing like that, they're going to rub against each other, and that's going to leave wounds where infection can get in, right? So remove crossing branches, good air circulation, feed them well to keep them healthy with the nature safe seaweed feed. And then at this magical time of bud burst, which I referred to earlier, when the growth is coming back out through the trees again, this is the time to give them a drench with that copper sulfate and water, a good broad spectrum organic fungicide. Now I say it's an organic fungicide, but that doesn't mean you should use it willy-nilly. Once a year, absolutely. It's copper sulfate, so only use it once a year, right? But do it now. This is the right time of the year to apply it and keep them well fed. So trying to prevent them is probably the best thing to do. Now I have another live question coming in there from Susan. When should lupins start growing again? Mine are just stumps in the earth. Is that bad? Well, it is, Susan, if they don't come back, but hopefully they will. I'd expect to see them coming back around now. Again, a shot of the nature safe seaweed feed would drive on growth. But lupins, unfortunately, sometimes the winter wet can have put paid to them. Now, the last question I can get to today is one that came in earlier. It was from Sharon. Hi, Peter, what should I do with the leaves now the crocuses have finished flowering? Should I cut them back? They look like tufts in the flower beds. Well, no, Sharon, don't cut them back, because that greenery that's in the leaves, that's all going to go back into the bulb, which is going to be the food source for next year's leaves and flowers. So as they're dying back, give them a shot of the nature safe tomato food, because that's going to bring the potassium and phosphorus back into the bulb to give you lovely, lovely flowers for next year. So no, let them die back naturally. Now, thank you to everybody who has sent in questions. I think I could be doing this for 10 hours every Friday instead of 1 hour. We never get to all of them. So if I didn't